because it is your story, it is your truth that is actually giving you that empowerment to actually speak up and to actually become also an advocate for others and for yourself. So as we move along, these are the key messages for this presentation. And like I said today, please sit, enjoy, feel free to ask questions as needed. I am here for you guys today, and I hope that my story empowers you to speak up today. So who is Berenice Soto and how did her story start? I'm glad to say that even though I am a leader in coaching, and I'm also a coach in energy and work with energy to help others heal, after a marriage of almost 12 years, where I thought that I had my forever story. I was happily with everything that was going on around me, that I had it all made. I was actually hit. And I see it the best way that I see it as a storm. It came as a storm because everything just from one moment to the other, it just broke loose. And when I say that, I mean it, because I woke up that Saturday morning, things as usual. We're getting ready to go have breakfast as a family, and he asked me, let's make sure that we go out today, that we take the girls out, have fun, and so on. We go out to breakfast. And then that evening, the storm hit. And literally the image that you're seeing in your screen is exactly what happened. Everything that we have worked for basically just broke at that moment. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even know who he was. It just happened so quick. And I was in the midst of so many mixed emotions. I had just found out that I was pregnant with my last child. I had just given him the news. I had just found out that I basically had accepted to be a stay-at-home mom. So I had just quit my job of 8 years. The girls were doing really good because I do have 4 children, and my other 2 older ones were doing really good. My son was actually launching his own business at that time. So everything just seemed perfect. And it was just one thing that actually brought the storm. And it was, I am done and I am leaving. And it was like, how are you just done and leaving? Like, what's going on? I'm pregnant. You asked me for this child. What am I supposed to do? I quit my job because you wanted me to be a stay-at-home mom, as where we were preparing also to launch our business. So with all that being said, it just basically broke me, and I became isolated. I isolated myself for my entire pregnancy. And the whole entire pregnancy, the question was the why. Why me? Why now? Why did I have to go through this? Why did I make that choice? Was it my fault? Was it his fault? Could I have done anything different? And I think that as humans, whether we are males or females, we are always asking this question: why me? Why me? And it is in the why that sometimes we have to take a step back and really ask, what were those red flags? And I think that that's when we struggle, when we actually start reflecting on our own story and say, okay, instead of me staying in this room and keeping myself isolated from growing, isolated from potential advancement, or isolating myself from what God has waiting out there for me, one of the things that we have to take back is saying, okay, it is me. The why, it is you. I think that's the bottom line. We have to accept that part of your why, it is you. Once we accept that, then the second thing that becomes into play is, what choice do I have now? What is it that I want to do now? I'm in the middle of the storm. The adverse effect of the storm has happened. I have lost everything. I lost the husband. I lost the marriage. I lost the family that I had. I still have the components. I still have the ingredients to make something new. But what am I supposed to do now? So it is at that moment when you grab your choice and you're like, okay, I need to start reflecting, and I need to start healing, even though I'm still in the storm. I'm still seeing the adverse effect of these storms. So I need to start healing. And there is a lot of things that can bring you into that healing phase and into that moment of saying, you know what, Berenice, it's enough. You're done with surviving. Because basically we all go into survival mode where we're facing that storm, and all we're trying to do is grab our kids, grab whatever is left of us, and just saying, I'm not letting go of this. But sometimes in order for you to heal, you have to accept I'm surviving, and what do I have to let go in order to move into my healing phase in order to survive this storm. And as you're transitioning to that, you need to reflect on that why, on you and your new choice. And one of the things that brought my why, my choice, and my change was when I reflected on what I said, those red flags. And part of those red flags were scary to me because I came to realize that a lot of our stories are not the same. When now that I'm actually advocating for domestic violence, now that I'm meeting new individuals that have gone through this storm, some of them saw some of these red flags from the beginning. I did not. And that's what I thought. I did not. Why? Because he never put a hand on me until the last day. He never was verbally abused with me until the last day. But this is where no longer staying in silence becomes part of my story, because he learned how to silence me. And it was that abuse of silence that actually led to the big storm. Because when I tried to speak, when I tried to scream for help, when I tried to actually get out of the storm, nobody was able to hear me. I could honestly say that if I would have died that night because of his physical abuse, everybody would have said, this poor guy, he was such an amazing husband, such an amazing father, and he just lost his wife. He could have lied and said, I wasn't part of her death, or I did not cause that death, and everybody would have believed him. Why? Because he used the word silence or the abuse of silence towards me. He learned for 12 years how to actually make me just stay quiet and not use anything against him. And when I say anything against him, because it was little things that now that I reflect back that he did, said to me, that he acted in a certain way, that he would find a way to jump first and be like, I am sorry, babe, I didn't mean this, or I'm sorry, this wasn't supposed to happen, I don't know what happened. And before I could even say anything, he would bombard me with love by giving me other choices. And sometimes, his tears, his words of affirmation towards me, his words of, or his promises, and now that I declare on false promises, were the ones that were leading to me to just stay silent and be like, you know what? It wasn't his fault. So I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't share anything. I didn't even knew that abuse could form in the format of silence. So again, when I was living this storm, I had to finally break loose and say, Berenice, yes, you were silenced. Yes, you were abused for more than just a year. Everything that happened didn't happen in one night. And like I mentioned to you guys, that morning we woke up, everything was perfect. By that evening, I was in a hospital bed debating my life and also a child that I was carrying. It was the worst news when they said, if you lose this child based on the state that you are, he will be charged with murder. That's how severe my injuries were that night. I could not believe that everything that I had gone through in just a little bit of hours, thinking that everything that we went through was a fairy tale and it was a perfect marriage. But I didn't realize that was happening. So I made that choice after I left that hospital, after I went home and I spent my entire pregnancy in isolation. Then one day I realized, okay, what is left from this storm? I still had things around this home that belonged to him. I still could see the pictures. I could still see my children waiting for him to walk in the door. And I knew that the change had to come. I knew that I did not have the strength or the power to look and trying to figure out the why. So as I started looking for professional help, and it's obviously the number one thing that I would suggest to everybody, we need professional help. And there is no fault, no guilt, no shame on looking at professional help, but we do need it. One of the things that one of my therapists mentioned to me was like, Berenice, when you talk to me, all I hear is that you want the best for your children and you want the best for your children, but your children cannot have the best out of you if you don't heal. So when she said that, I love writing. I love speaking my story through poems, through wording, through writing stories, and so on. And one day I'm just sitting down, and I also love being in the dark. So as little light I could have in a room, the better for me. So I'm there in the middle of my room, dark. I literally just have one of those colored night lights, and I turn it on and I start writing. And I could hear in the silence, again, look at the word silence. I could hear in the silence my hope. And when I say hope, I could hear my children upstairs because they were supposed to be in bed, but I could hear the two older daughters having a conversation in the room. I looked to the side, I could see the baby, and then I could hear my son walking in the room. And I said, wow, I am living for these children, but I am not living for myself. And if I am gone tomorrow, what's going to happen to them? And when I questioned that, that's when I realized the cost of silence. And I realized the cost of silence because when we're suffering, we also struggle to face our loved ones. I had been living, like I mentioned, in isolation for over 9 months, probably at this period over a year. But I never came to realize that I had not faced my children. I had actually already passed on that abuse to them. And even though unconsciously I had passed that abuse to them and I wasn't abusing them, I was also somehow showing them how to be silenced in the middle of hurting. The other thing that I realized at that moment was that we were surviving by trying to heal ourselves against staying quiet. We realized, okay, if I realized for one moment, if I don't cry in front of the kids are going to think I'm okay and they're going to be okay. And the children were doing the same thing. They were not crying in front of me. They were not saying we miss dad or we miss the old us because they didn't want to see me suffer. However, the breaking point became when one of my daughters one day came running. And you could imagine, for those that have children, when the kids are so excited and they're like, mom, 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 mom. And literally that's what happened. She's like running, coming looking for me. And I'm like, what's going on, TT? And she's like, mommy, guess what? And I said, what, TT? She's like, I know why daddy left. And you could feel that moment. And for us that are mothers, you realize at that moment, I got excited, but I had this gut feeling in my stomach that my eyes got full of tears. And I said, okay, let's see what this innocent child is going to tell me. And she looked at me and she's like, mom, daddy left because I told him one day I didn't like his music. So he told me, if you don't like it, then leave. But he's the one that left. That was heartbreaking. That was heartbreaking. And it wasn't not only what she told me, it wasn't that she had found the solution. What hurt me the most was that because I had stayed silent, my kids were also doing the same thing I was doing for over a year. They were trying to survive. They were not healing. And as they were doing that, they were trying to find the why to all the whys I had in that hospital bed. They also had their own whys everything had come to. And it was in that moment that I said, enough is enough. We are done surviving. We are going to start healing and we're going to start speaking up. And when we decided to do that, or when I decided to do that, things started shifting even at my home. Why? Because I was able now to cry without shame, without the fear of saying my kids are going to start crying. They needed to cry too. They needed to vent too. When I started speaking up about my feelings with them, it was reciprocal. They started speaking out their feelings as well. I could see them changing. I had inherited the silence abuse into them. And then I realized that silence abuse was also inherited to me, even by my own loved ones, not only him. At that moment of reflection, I went back to all the women in my family and I came to realize that this was something that we just passed on and we don't realize it because we don't see it as an abuse. We don't see how this actually affects us as we're children, as we're teenagers, as we move into adulthood. But it's something that we have to break the pattern to. It's something that we have to realize that it does exist. And when we actually come to live it and accept it, then that's when we could speak our story. So again, as I'm telling you my story is, and I'm telling you how I'm actually stepping away from this storm that came out of nowhere in my mind at that time, because now I see the signs of abuse and how it actually led to there. I also want to share that I started reading more. I started healing more with my children. And just like I said it before, I lived for my children, but it wasn't until I came to this realization that I finally said, yes, my children have become my healing, my purpose. And it is them who is making me strong to move into the next direction in life. So they became my guiding lights. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I like to do is spend time in the dark. I spend time in the dark. And when it finally clicked to me when Tiana or Titi came to running into the room that we were surviving and not healing, that's when I just asked for the signs. I said, I am tired. I am tired of living in this room. I am tired of living in this house in the dark. I am tired of isolating myself. What is it that I have to do? And I didn't even realize, and I think that if I would have planned this, it would never have served its purpose. But in the middle of that, I'm the kind of person that I try to make poems with names, with words, and so on. And there I'm writing and writing and writing about my children in this journal. And then I realized that the first initial of my children spelled the word star with double R, because I did lose a child. And that was the moment of like, wow, my guiding lights are my own children. S stands for Sophia. T stands for Tiana. A for Amalia. R for Rosalia, which is the child that I lost. And R for Ramses, for my son. When this came into light, when this came into my paper, when I wrote this, I said, how am I going to use this? What is the universe? What is my highest being telling me at this moment? And the first thing that came into mind, I said, yes, it does spell the word star, but it also has something to do with my next step, with my next mission, with my next framework. And I said, I'm going to use this to create the foundation of a process of healing and empowerment. And I only did it with the purpose of my children. I wanted them to know that part of my healing was just not saying they're my healing. Because of them, I'm here. Because of them, I did it. No, I wanted to have a purpose. A purpose not only to say they were my inspiration, they were my guiding lights, but they are also what can help others get away from being silenced and start speaking and telling their stories. And believe it or not, today I'm actually sharing that framework with you. And I'm calling it Awakening the Star Within. This was designed to transform you. This was designed to give you that guide and that light into speaking up your truth. I want you to understand that star became my personal compass. It has guided me through my healing and through my empowerment. And I'm still in the process. I think the first thing that we have to accept that when we decide to start healing, there's no time for it. You can be healed in one day, or you can be healed the rest of your life. So there is no time frame. There is no way for you to say like, I'm healed, I'm done, and I'm good to go. It's never going to happen. So we're always healing. I'm still healing. Even speaking here with you guys is healing me as I'm speaking my truth and as I'm introducing you to this star compass that came to my love. I told you earlier, star means the name of my children. But then I converted this into something that is going to help others. And that's now my new mission. S now stands for strength. When we work quiet, we start building the courage However, as we start building the courage and we start thinking, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to move on from this? How can I tell him or her that I am done? How can I speak to my elderlies and say, like, you have to respect me. This is my choice. And I say that because sometimes I think that part of my silence was I did not want my elders or my family or others to think I failed, in quotation. And I went from having a marriage to now being a single mom because I didn't know how to stay quiet and fight for a family or a marriage that I was raised to fight for. But no. What strength represents here is that you have built a resilience within, and then within, you have now that courage to start speaking up. So S now stands for strength. If you're feeling that courage inside you, if you're staying resilient and persistent to what the change that you want in your life, know that that is part of your light. That is your inner truth. That is part of your inner healing that wants to come out. T now stands for trust. And this is about trusting your inner intuition. I think we all have it. We all have that sixth sense. We all have that gut feeling that whenever we go anywhere, we're like, this doesn't seem right. Or you're speaking to someone and you're like, wait a second, makes you think. Or even as you're going through your story in life, some of the instances that are happening, some of the things that are occurring day to day, you start questioning yourself like, should I be here? Should I say something? Should I do something different? And Star invites you to do that. As you start trusting yourself, trust yourself. Even if you don't want to see this as your sixth sense or your gut feeling, know that our brain is designed to send those neurons back and forth and give us that fight, flight, reflect. So sometimes it's not even that sixth sense or that second feeling or so on. It is your body's response telling you something is off. So if you don't want to trust one, trust your own body. Your own body is speaking to you. And I'm not sure if you're catching the pattern here, but everything comes within. So even if your body is speaking to you, it's coming within. There is something that is making you react. I'm pretty sure that if I was able to see everybody that has joined us today and I was to say, okay, raise your hand if you have ever felt anxiety in your life, we will all be speaking up. What about, the ones that felt frustrated, angry? Again, that is part of your mechanism acting or reacting to something that doesn't feel normal to it. So trust that second feeling, trust your second gut. As we continue on, the next one will be now A instead of Amalia is acceptance. And this is honoring your story. Understanding and accepting that some of your chapters in your story are going to be even hard for you to speak up about. It wasn't easy for me to declare myself a domestic violence survivor. I kept saying, like, how am I going to label myself as a domestic violence survivor when I'm a leader in society, when I have a title in society, when I have a bachelor's in this, I'm a coach, I'm all of this stuff. And I was like, how am I going to even tell my daughters I'm a domestic violence survivor when I want to prevent that from happening in their lives? But it was until I accepted that and that I finally started wearing that title and saying, yes, I'm a survivor, but now I'm using my story to heal. Now I'm using my story to help others. Now I'm using my story to advocate for others, to speak up for others. Acceptance is a key component to our story. Everyone, and I mean everyone, we're going to go through a book about our story one day. And as we read it, tears are going to come down. We're going to try to scream. We're going to get mad. But that's the purpose of any story. We want the readers to connect with us, but they won't be able to connect with us if we don't accept what we've been through, what we're going through, and what we plan to do now that we have discovered who we are. As we move into the double R's, the next one will be R for release. This is, I think, the hardest component of awakening the star within you. And the reason why I say that is because this is where we have to accept and then start letting go. Letting go is hard. We all humans are not, for some reason, we struggle with being in a comfort level and moving into a quotation discomfort level. And I say that because when we're so used to things and things are flowing for us, or we just know the in and outs. Again, imagine in my storm, I went from being married one day to the next day not having a partner, figuring out how to deal life with 4 children, figuring out how to deal with expenses under just even no budget. Because if you guys remember, I didn't even have a job at that moment. I actually had an interview scheduled that Monday after I was released from the hospital. So with all that being said, I still was struggling of letting go of my old life. Believe it or not, and it's crazy, but at that moment, I had even imagined, what if he walks in here and says, I'm sorry again, and I find out that he's dealing with some problems, we find the help, can we still be that happy family again? I was even thinking about the solution. And to me, it just made sense that the solution would be forgive him, find help, and then we will be happy again. And it was not that. I had to let go. Sometimes letting go is not only memories, because I am going to be the first one to say, some memories, you just don't want to let them go. You had a great time. You enjoy yourselves. You made a life together. Why let go of what made you happy? I, till this day, can give you the whole story about my wedding day because I had a blast on my wedding day. The loved ones that were with us had a blast about our wedding day. It was the wedding of the year. Everybody spoke about it. I felt honored that everybody that participated in our wedding, from the photographer, from the cooker, everybody, before they left the venue, they all came to us and said, we have never seen a couple so happy and enjoying their entire wedding. For God's sake, we didn't even realize we didn't have a cake until the photographer told us, where's the cake? And then we went to ask, and they're like, well, there was an incident when it arrived. It actually fell on the floor. We started laughing, and we're just like, is there a piece of cake we can use? And they're like, they're about to get here. This was at 11 p.m., almost when everything was over. But that's how much I enjoy my wedding. And I will always brag about my wedding, and I will always remember my wedding, because it was the start that gave me my lights, my star now. So that's something that I'm not willing to let go, because it made me happy and I lived it and I was happy. But there are other memories that I had to let go, or I had to digest them to take the best out of it. Sometimes some of us have to let go of things that we don't want to. And this is where I say, you have to start releasing, letting go of those things that no longer serve you. When that incident happened with me, that I ended up in the hospital that night, I was driving my truck. And that was a truck that I bought when I had turned 30 years old. So it was, exclusively designed for me and everything. I didn't have no need. But every time I used to drive that truck, I became anxious. I would cry. I would start driving not even a mile away from home. And I had to fear, what if he sees me? What if he stops me? What if he does it again? So it came to that moment where I said, yes, my budget does not fit a new car in here, or a new loan for a car or anything. But how am I going to function as a mother of 4 that I have to take these children to practices, to all of this stuff, without letting go of this truck? So I had to let it go. For some of us, it could just be pictures in the wall. For some of us, it could be their clothes that they left behind, whatever it is, in order for you to move on, in order for you to take the next step, you have to start releasing and letting go of some of these things. And I spend a little more time in releasing because whether we like it or not, it is the stepstone to rising, which is our next letter. R stands for rise. It is that moment that when you start letting go, that you start seeing those lights in your tunnel to start shining in. You start seeing new paths. You start seeing new avenues, and you're like, oh, wow, I wasn't in the dark. But then those lights become reciprocal because as you're letting new light into your life, guess what? New light is coming out of you. New projects are coming out. New hope is coming out of you. And it is in that moment that, like I mentioned earlier, even though you're healing, you now become empowered. You now can actually say with courage, I'm a survivor. I lived this. Nobody can tell me how to live it. Nobody can actually tell me how it feels, how it hurts, how it could actually shut you down. But nobody can tell me also what made me start taking that step into rising and into becoming a better version of myself. So as we start learning the new star version of Berenice, some of the lessons that I want to emphasize on and share with you all is that I have learned to rise above silence. After being quiet, after suffering in silence, in other words, I converted that into being resilient and saying, I am no longer willing to sacrifice my life for anybody that doesn't deserve for me to stay quiet. That doesn't mean that I'm going to go out there and start pointing fingers. That doesn't mean that I'm now in the perfection mode and telling everybody you should be doing this and that. But I will be the first one to not tolerate or witness that type of abuse to others. The second thing that I have learned in my journey is breaking cycles. I didn't mean to stay silent so that my children can become silent. When I wasn't aware, I did it so that I didn't want them to suffer. I didn't want them to go through the same things that I was going through. But then as I stood quiet, they also thought that they had to stay quiet, that they couldn't scream their emotions, that they couldn't speak up about what they were feeling, about missing their dad, about missing their old lives. So I broke that cycle, and it's okay. There are still days where one of the kids will come over and will say like, Mom, I miss my dad, or Mom, I think I saw dad. And it is not my job to say like, how could you, or no. I nourish that moment. I give them a hug and I'm like, it's okay. You can miss your dad. It's okay. I tend to always tell them, you're human, you're flesh, you hurt. If they need to cry, they need to cry. My first thing sometimes is to tell him, write him a letter. One day he'll get those letters. But at least I know that I'm breaking that cycle and I'm not allowing my kids to think that they have to bury their emotions or stay quiet about their emotions and what they're feeling with the fear that they're going to hurt somebody else. Because they're not hurting me. They're not hurting anybody else. They're just hurting themselves. The other thing that I learned through this is that my story matters. Not only does it matter for me, for my healing, but it matters for my children. And it matters for a lot of individuals out there that are still struggling to pinpoint what they're going through. Like I mentioned earlier, silence is a form of abuse. But you would not think that it's a form of abuse because all we are doing is just staying quiet. Some of us learned this when we were children. When we were started screaming or when we were too loud, we would be like, shh, be quiet or lower your voice. But I think that that is something that now that I have children in all phases of life, and I say all phases of life because I have a 23-year-old, I have one in the teens, 12, then I have a 10 and a 1 year old. As I'm starting to reflect on how they're learning, how they're growing, and everything. Even with the 1 year old, she can be loud. And what I'm starting to do is now speak to her. And if it's a moment where she can be loud, guess what? I'm joining her. If she starts screaming and singing and dancing, I'm screaming and singing and dancing with her. But if it's in a place where it's quiet, I started, doing this or asking her to be quiet a little bit lower. But I'm doing this because I have learned this. I have learned to grow this from my own story. And I want her story to also matter to her as she starts moving along, as she starts growing, because it's going to be her way of healing. I want my children and I want my friends and I want the woman that I inspire or anybody that I inspired to feel comfortable to sit with their own story. Because I am now comfortable with my own story. It wasn't easy. Throughout the process, I hurt, I cried, I screamed, I got mad at the world, I got mad at my higher being. I did it all. But now I accept it. My story matters. And it is my story that is helping me now. And then the other lesson was there is light in the darkness. When a storm hits, and especially when it's very unexpected, you lose sight of who you are, who you were, what mattered, what didn't matter. And then you are left in the middle of the adverse effect where you start seeing everything spread all over. What was you is now being pulled all over and everywhere. But once you start connecting yourself, speaking your story, and healing from inside, and that light starts coming from inside, trust me, it is that light that gives you new senses, new vision, new voice, new hearing. And then that light starts coming up, and all that was left from that storm that was that darkness no longer exists. I know it's easy said, and just very briefly, I actually just recently co-authored this book and it just launched a couple weeks ago, but I speak more about this in there. I tell my full story in there. I talk about how storms will silence you, but then at the same time, how they actually can help you awake yourself. And then I speak more about the STAR framework and actually how to use it and give some practical tools to give you that power to come out and bring that light out. Because one of the things that I have learned throughout the process is that my light is helping shine others who are in the dark. How am I doing this? I'm doing this as I'm rising, as I'm speaking, and as I'm leading. Before this storm came into my life, I was already a leader. I was already a coach. I already had all these titles behind my name. But I can proudly tell you now that it is my story that gave me that power to now light the true light into others. As I'm speaking my truth, I am actually empowering and inspiring others to do the same. As I'm leading the way, I'm seeing how others are getting inspired with my story, how others want to speak up, and how others are taking joy of what's happening in my life, in my children's life, and now in their life. I started realizing that I am my own medicine. Like I mentioned earlier, do not, give the value to professionals, because we do need professionals, especially when we're going through these hard moments. But we can heal ourselves. And the way to do that is becoming our own medicine, accepting who we are, accepting our uniqueness, whether it is in gift and experiences, our stories, whatever it is. Once we accept that and we say we are learning from this, we're able to move into the next step and become our own medicine. And medicine is reciprocal. So not only do we heal ourselves, but then as we give a little bit of our own medicine to others, we help others also heal. And then we rise unstoppable. People start looking at you, you become inspirational, opportunities start coming to you. It's crazy, but this Friday, I received a call and they said, Bernice, it's up. And I said, what is up? And they're like, remember, we told you that if you became part of this, you could be up there. And I was like, oh, I forgot about that. I told my kids, we're going to New York this weekend. We literally drove to New York. We drove 13 hours there, 13 hours back, only to be there 3 hours in Times Square. What had happened was that my picture wasn't one of those billboards this weekend. And that's because I decided to rise. That's because I decided to speak my story. And that's because somebody believed in me and is now showing me a picture up there as a leading lady because I'm helping others lead. So just very quickly, I would like to share with you my affirmations of power. And I use these on the regular basis when I feel that I cannot move on. And I hope it helps you guys as well. I am the light after the darkness. I accept my story. I am strong. I release what no longer serves me. I trust my voice. I rise unstoppable. Has been a pleasure speaking my story to all. I hope it gives you inspiration. I'm always an advocate to connect with others, to build communities. So feel free to connect with me by either logging in and going directly into my website, which is here, bgsevolution.online, or to any other social media platforms. Scan the QR code and you should have all my contact information. I thank you and send you all love and a big, big, big hug. Your silence.
I might be muted. There we go. It's the first one this morning. We're trying to get in the groove. Thank you so much. I love that. Yes, you are your own medicine and you can heal yourself. You're right. And you're right that we need professionals for many reasons, and that's why we have them. But there's nothing like doing the work that you have to do to find out who you are, what you want, what you need. We push that down so much over our lifetimes that when something like this happens to us, we kind of, because we've lost ourselves, we kind of
all over.
Who am I? What do I really want? Do I even like my eggs like that? I don't, like so many questions come up. And you're right, speaking your story was one of the reasons why I created this platform, was so that we could speak our stories, because that's so critical in the healing process, in being able to share what has happened to us in a safe space with other women and know that we're supported and that we're not judged and that there's no shame in what has happened to us, because it's not something that we should be ashamed of.
Nope. No. And I think that along with that, I think is understanding that even sharing our story is still going to hurt, and it's okay, but it's part of the healing. Right. There's times where I still cry. There's times where I just still scream, but I'm like, it's okay. I got to let those flow, and it's just part of it.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us, and congratulations on Times Square. That's fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Did you take them?
Yes, I will be sharing them. I have posted them, but I'll share them with you directly. But yes, it was something.
Share them with me, because we'll use them in the promos for She Is Me at Sea. And everyone, She Is Me at Sea, we're sailing from Los Angeles to Vancouver next May 2nd through the 6th. Berenice will be with me and 30 other amazing women. This is our leadership cruise for She Is Me. It's 4 days, and it's just this intensive, amazing, fun, wonderful event that we're having. Our awards gala will be on board as well. So please visit She Is Me at Sea And look at our awards, give us some nominations, because we'd love to have you and anyone else on board with us. But we really want to honor the women who are doing things to change the world. So, check that out. Berenice, thank you.
Thank you. Blessed day. Bye-bye.
We'll be right back with Christy King. We'll be talking about She Is Me Health. So we'll be right back.